Welcome to Understanding Society, part of the National Economic and Social Research Council's Festival of Social Science, brought to you by the University of Sheffield. In this episode, Dr Nadena Doharty talks to the Lewisham Primary School head, Mr Dean Gordon, about embedding anti-racism to improve the experiences and outcomes of black pupils.
Hello everyone, I am Nadena Doharty and I am lecturer at the University of Sheffield, and I have the privilege of speaking to Mr Dean Gordon, who is head teacher of Grinling Gibbons Primary School in London, and he is one of the few black head teachers in the UK, so this is a very special podcast. And Dean has been head teacher of that school for 6 years. Dean, how are you?
I'm good. It's a good day. It's not as sunny and bright as I expected it to be, but you know what? Got to give thanks. It's a good day.
So we are going to be talking about all of the exciting anti-racist work that you've been doing with other heads in the Lewisham Borough. And I think we should probably go back to August 2020. I saw and responded to a call by Lewisham Council for an expert in race equality. And I remember seeing the advert saying it was to support heads in creating an action plan for embedding race equality in schools and raising the attainment of Black Caribbean pupils. So could you explain for our listeners what prompted that call?
What was another terrible incident in the United States? The killing of George Floyd reignited conversations around the globe about race and race equality, race inequality. Now, that again spoke about how black people are treated globally. Now, that was, let's say, a pebble dropped in the ocean, but it spilled across the entire globe. Now, when that happened, we thought about and reflected on, you know what, actually, this goes on far too long, and Lewisham is just like anywhere else in the world, and black people are not treated fairly, equally. So we then had the chance to look at this and think, okay, what can we do to make a difference, impact for our black people? Now, I was one of the few people who spoke out in one of our heads forum to say, actually, what happened to George Floyd isn't right, and what will we do if that were to happen to us here? So what I did was I wrote a statement which I placed on my website, and I shared that with the head teachers forum, and some people were a bit quiet, didn't want to say anything, but I had to speak up. From that message I sent, it was then tagged on by the leaders in Lewisham. Ironically, it's like they used that information that I shared to make it a bigger thing by having the leaders of Lewisham tag onto it. And then that was then encouraged that all schools in Lewisham would have a message on the website about Black Lives Matter and what we're doing for black pupils and families and staff. So that's it. That's the start of the whole initial thing. Sorry, one thing I need to forget is that there's underrepresentation of black leaders, and the performance of Black Caribbean heritage pupils as well has been a factor for Lewisham for a very long time. And we thought that this would be something that we could actually tap into to get something out. So we come out on the better side of the spectrum in terms of what we get for our Black Caribbean heritage pupils.
And you just said something interesting. You said you felt you had to speak out. Why did you feel you had to do it?
Well, as a black man, that could have happened to me. I've had experiences where I've been stopped by the police on more than one occasions, and it was just guilty of being black, driving a nice car, or just going out. Why do you stop me? There's nothing wrong. Everything was legal, legit, because that's the way I behave. That's the way I roll, as you would say. But I was stopped. It could have been me who was stopped then, and it could have been 7 minutes later I was dead. So I had to speak out because it happens too often. And obviously what I did didn't change the world, but at least it started a conversation which has gotten to a bigger place where right now we're in a different place where conversations are happening that were not being had before because people were afraid to speak up. So someone had to take the plunge and say something. And I thought, you know what, why not me?
And what made you or Lewisham more broadly want to select an outside expert rather than another head teacher, for example?
Whatever you're doing in any organization, right? It's always good to get an outside expert, someone who is impartial, someone who's got no reason to skew the information or the data. Say it as it is, and because of your track record, someone who's proven the work that you've done in race and race equality, you were the person on top of our list that we wanted to speak to see what you could do to support us to start this journey.
Okay, and so for the avoidance of doubt for the listeners, I worked with Lewisham, so I was appointed for 8 days with Lewisham Council and Lewisham Learning to speak to various stakeholders like Black parents, some young people, governors and others, to understand kind of what the issues were structurally, interpersonally, and then to create an action plan which was submitted in September 2020. So what are the issues, attainment-wise, facing Black Caribbean pupils across Lewisham schools, and why should anyone care about this now?
A lot has happened for Black Caribbean heritage pupils. Now, for one, there's an issue around high rates of exclusion. There is an issue of Black pupils being seen as adults instead of being seen as children. There's an issue of not being given a chance because before they've even spoken, they are wrong, they're guilty. So all of those things that happened in the past because people don't invest time into seeing what the issues are, where they're coming from. As I spoke about earlier about Black man like myself will be stopped by the police. Those kids might see that on a regular basis. Their doors are kicked in. They're traumatized by the system that we live in. They come into a school setting, primary or secondary, and they've got all that baggage to deal with. But do schools actually invest time to get to know those children and to support them? Sometimes, sadly, it doesn't. It's very quick, it's very easy to, you know what, let's get rid of them, let's exclude them from school because they can't behave without having dug deep to see what the issues are. Now, all of those things I've spoken about, and there's lots more I could go into, will impact on any child's mental state. And therefore, in school, the last thing they want to do is to learn. Now, and it's not all Black Caribbean heritage pupils, because if that was the case, I would not be here now. But it does affect a large majority of them. So therefore, they're unable to perform highly or at their best, and that is indicated in the data that is produced at the end of any given year across the schools, both in primary and secondary. So that is the issue, and that's something that needs to be addressed, needs to be fixed. But it's a bigger problem that we think it is. It's not just any one of those strands. There's many strands, and we delve in deep to try and get to the bottom of it, because one of the first things that you need to keep the children in school. If they're there, and once they're in, we treat them with respect as we treat their white counterparts, and therefore a fair chance, level playing field, as best you can make it leveled, to give them the right chance, the right skills, so that when they do sit those exams at the end of the year or end of their time in school, they can actually achieve just like anybody else.
That was so interesting what you just said. It made me think about the American literature on the adultification of Black girls, to making Black girls, treating them as adults rather than children. And I'm wondering if you can, because you're a primary school head teacher, maybe give our listeners an example of that, because we can be in a space where we might think, well, all teenagers want to be treated like adults, so there's this tension there. But what do you specifically mean as it pertains to Black children being seen as adult too early?
There are many examples, but I'm going to go for one, which is everybody these days watches YouTube. I've got quite a few kids in my school. We're in Lewisham, north of Lewisham, and I have like a high percentage of my kids who have American accent. They've never been to America before. What is it? They watch YouTube and they watch these videos and they watch these different things and they copy the accents. Now, children here also watch YouTube and they look at all the dances from around the world. Now, if a girl in primary school were to dance the way they see dance going on, they will be then said that they're actually behaving like older people in terms of they're more mature than their age. But actually, is that the case, or is that because, let's be honest, if you're from the Caribbean, you have music in your bones, you're going to be dancing. you see that, you do it. Does it have to be said that they're being too mature, or can it just be seen as kids being kids? They're copying what they see, and it's about how we channel that energy into them doing something with that, the music in their bones, to make them perform something that looks beautiful, rather than making them out to be these overly mature girls. And therefore, if something goes wrong, we're quick to accuse, punish, penalize them for what they're doing.
As I said in the introduction, you are one of a few black head teachers in the country. So small, in fact, that the government is at pains to report on numbers of black heads. So what drives your passion for race equality?
Okay, where do I begin? Having been here and lived it. Now, one of the reasons why I'm here is because of my resilience. I've worked in the UK since 2002, right? It's going on 20 years now. And I've had to work sometimes 5-10 times as hard as other colleagues of mine who are not black to achieve anything at all. And I'm always watching my back to think, okay, you know what? If I make a mistake, then I'll be out, the first one out. Whereas other people can make 10 mistakes and you give them a chance because of who they are. Now, having seen that for me, I know exactly what it is like. So therefore, because I'm one of the few black head teachers, boys in school do not see people like me as being role models. Some of the boys are from single homes. It's just a mom or a grandma or an aunt, and they've got no one there to be a role model for them. So my job here is to make sure that I'm here doing what is right, so that they can see, you know what, actually, as a boy from the Caribbean or from anywhere else, not just Caribbean, but African countries as well, you can aspire to achieve what I've achieved. So I will make sure that whatever I'm doing in school is to show them that whatever it is that you'd like to do, you can achieve it. So that is kind of my driving force, that I'm here as an example, as a good role model to support pupils. And it's not just our black pupils. It's also white pupils as well, the white working class as well. Because someone needs to stand up and show them that, you know what, there's better. I've said to my kids at all times, whatever you can dream or think of, guess what? You can achieve it. But for you to achieve that, you've got to have the people around you to suggest to you that, yes, it is possible. If you're being told every day that, you know what, you're useless, you can't achieve, you can't do that, then you won't. If you're being told that, you know what, actually, give it a shot, I'll support you, I'll help you, then you start to think more seriously about, yes, I can do this if I put my head to it. And that's my role, to support my pupils. And also the staff I work with as well, they'll be thinking, okay, fine, yes, he's someone who's supportive of me and will give me the options and the chances to do things that others would have not given a chance. Because that's what I faced. I had to fight for everything I've got to get there, because it was never given to me. It was never easy at all for me. So I've had to fight for it. Because I had to do that, I'm trying to make it easier for all those who come in contact with me by making the opportunities available for them.
Okay. But you also need a voice. From what I'm hearing from you, at certain times you need to have the courage, it seems, to speak out like you did at the beginning when we were talking.
Yes, in the past I haven't had a chance to do that because I wasn't allowed to speak up, because where I work in a federation, it's the Phoenix Federation of Schools, and I've had executive teachers in the past who would not allow me to speak up because it doesn't tie into their narrative. Now, luckily for me now, who I'm working with now is on the same page like you did. Be yourself and speak up, because injustice, regardless of what color you are, things not right, someone has to speak up. And I'm an advocate for my community, and I speak up on their behalf if they can't do it for themselves.
How do you answer the charge from people less informed about race equality that racism isn't as bad because, look, you're a head teacher, what's the problem? These things take time, don't they?
Racism isn't as bad. The person who says that needs a lot of help, because it is bad. It's not something that is going away. You see it, it's global. Look at football, what happens to footballers now. Even though they get paid loads of money, they're still human. They're black, and they're being racially abused by all people. In schools, like I said, for me to be here now, I had to fight. I could have gotten a lot further, a lot earlier if I was white. And that is a fact, because I've done a lot of work in the schools I've worked in, and I've seen other people who walk in through the door with the least amount of experience, but have been promoted. Why is that the case? I remember once I was told by one of my previous heads in previous school was that sometimes, Dean, it's not that you can't do it, it's because your face doesn't fit. And that's something to think like, what does that mean? But again, it's the microaggression that is out there, and it is real. It is real that racism is here, and you have to fight to get where you want to get to, or you can give up and say, you know what, yeah, it's not meant for me, but I'm a fighter, I'll keep on fighting. It is real, and I got here because I fought, resilient, I was persistent, what I wanted, I had a goal, and because my goal is to get to that point, but also to support others to get there, because without people like me, other people in my position will not get a chance to get to where I am, which is sad, but it is a fact. That's what goes on.
So Kemi Badenoch, who we know to be the Minister of Equalities or Minister for Equalities, has suggested that teaching critical race theory is guilting white pupils for being white. So I have to ask this: are you making white students in your school feel guilty for being white, and are you teaching critical race theory in your school?
Okay, in my school, I treat every child equally. That's just me. That's the nature of the person that I am. So once you join my school, then you are given the same treatment regardless of your color. And we have last I checked, I think it was 18 or 19 different nationalities in my school. So it's right across the globe. And we do things like we have flag days, we have special occasions where we celebrate everybody in our school. Now, I am not going to make anyone feel less important to make anybody else feel important. What we're teaching is not like we have a curriculum where we teach just the black kids or just the white kids. We teach everybody the same thing. Our curriculum is broad and balanced. And what we're doing is that we are making our pupils aware of what has happened in the past, their history, which history is important to every single person. You can't know where you're going unless you know where you're coming from. So it's important that this is being taught in schools. Now, my school has got, I think, 97% black and minorities. So obviously, I've got to represent in terms of what we're teaching because it's most representative of the community. But at the same time, for the 2% of white and European families entering in the school, they cannot say that they are made to feel less important or they are feeling guilty because of who they are. That is not our policy in this school. We make every single family and children in school feel equally important, but at the same time, we have to make sure that history is not hidden in pockets because we can't talk about this because that was bad. It happened, and I want to empower my pupils so that they're fully aware of what happened, what their history has been like, and what could happen, what should happen, and how they can have a voice to try and change that.
And what about the question of critical race theory? Do you teach that in your school?
In a primary school, the curriculum is not that deep in terms of teaching critical race theory, but we do talk about race, racism, race equality, and inequality. It's something that we have to talk about because it is real. You can't hide from it. So to go in that deep in terms of critical race theory, probably we don't do that here, but we do pick up on things like race, racism, and something happens that is real to life because, like I said, my children see it every single day. So it would be stupid of us not to discuss it or talk about it. And because of that, in terms of we keep records of racial incidents that happens in school regularly or daily. In our school, it is like 0 to none. It doesn't happen because our pupils are very clued up as to what is accepted, what is not, and they're very good together regardless of what culture, what race they're from. And if that wasn't being done in the school the way we do it, we probably would have problems, but we don't.
How do you respond to the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities that institutional racism doesn't exist?
That is laughable. I'll tell you why. So, for example, in Lewisham, where I work, the top end of Lewisham has been and is predominantly white. Now, why is that when you have a percentage of so many black people in a borough like this that you can't have a black person at the top? What causes that? I've got no idea. Maybe the face don't fit. Why is that? You have in primary schools in Lewisham, myself and one other black head teacher, are the only male black head teachers. Why is that possible? There's lots of black male teachers in the borough, but they struggle to reach to any level of leadership or senior leadership in schools. Why is that the case? So the question is, and this is just one element of, there's lots of other elements across in terms of institutional racism that you could pick on. I'm talking about schools because that's where I work. If it wasn't there, you'd see a greater balance of leaders of all race, but that's not the case. It is in Lewisham, it's predominantly white, and that is a fact. And I will not apologize for saying that because that is exactly what it is. And I think it will be for a while until things have changed, which we're trying to hoping to change here.
Which brings me to my report. So, in your experience, how has my report outlined the ways in which institutional racism exists in Lewisham?
So yeah, the report you produce clearly states that things are not as you expect it to be. It is not. It's very clear that the parents you spoke to, they spoke about how the children feel going to school. Things about like the hair they wear, the uniform policy, and all of that. It's generally it lends itself more to the European ideals of what normal looks like. So therefore, it doesn't incorporate blackness, black culture. So that in itself says that there's a problem. So therefore, it is a problem. Now, from your report, what we have done as a steering group is that we pulled that apart. And we spent a lot of time with your action plan, and we've come up with our own race equality pledge, which highlights the things that we want to work on. And there are 8 bullet points of things that we will be working on over the next few years, which we hope that in itself will make a change towards Lewisham and how things are seen. Amongst those, some of the key ones are obviously we'd like to change the outcomes of Black Caribbean Heritage pupils. That's one of our main ones. We'd also like to see improved Black representations in leadership and governance. Those are 2 of the key ones, because by doing that, we should see a change. But there's others that I could go through with you as well.
I'm interested in the reaction to race equality and the improvement of Black Caribbean pupils' attainment. So, what has been the reaction in your local school, or the sense that you have with other head teachers in the borough?
Because I sat on the steering committee for race equality, it's been quite interesting to see how some head teachers interact at the start. It took us a very long time to get an agreed action plan and a pledge, because things were being discussed that, okay, we should not rush into this. Let's give it time. Let's try and get everybody on board. And there was me in the corner, like pulling my hair out, like, come on, guys, it's now 2021. We shouldn't be discussing this in such length because things aren't great and things need to change. There's an element of urgency. Again, there was a discussion about, yes, we would love to move quickly, but we need to get everybody to buy into this. So we deliberated and we came up with a plan in the end. For me, it was too slow, but that's just me because I'm very anxious and overexcited about getting this done because it's long overdue. Now, it has gone out and all schools are meant to buy into it in terms of the governors agreed and the heads agreed, and the information was sent out to parents and to staff and to children. So that is now where we are. It's ongoing. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure. We have a meeting on Wednesday. I'm not quite sure if all schools have actually bought into it. But what I know for a fact is that the pledge has been sent out to all of Lewisham. It's gone live. It was done on Windrush Day 2021. It was sent out, so it's now live. So what I know is that parents are aware of it. So if their school hasn't bought into it, the parents can now challenge the schools and say, no, well, actually, this pledge is here for Lewisham schools. Why haven't you? So parents now have a greater voice and kind of, you could say, a weapon in their defense if they have to be, if they have a challenge at school about how things are going, because it covers all the elements of what schools in Lewisham should be doing to encourage race equality. So I think from that perspective, I'm quite pleased that this has happened. It's still early days, But let's see what happens over time, because we'll be reviewing it as we go along to see how things are progressing. And any school that has not bought in or joined in, they will be challenged, because that's another strand of it as well. It's about that openness and that transparent reporting and sharing of borough-wide data trends to see what is going on. So we'd expect to see a reduced number of exclusions, and over time we expect to see that attainment for Black urban heritage pupils will be improved.
It's interesting to me that schools could decide not to participate. I don't understand why they would decide not to, or what excuse they would give, considering race is a protected characteristic in the Equality Act.
And it comes back down to this idea of freedom of speech. And if you think about the government that we have currently, which will stand and say, well, actually, taking a knee is a political statement. It's not about the fact that racism is wrong. So when you have people like those saying those things in the power position that they hold, then stop and think a little head teacher in a school actually, I'm going to listen to the leaders that if they're saying that they're not in agreement with it, or they won't stand up and say, yes, racism is wrong, then, actually, I can, in my corner, say that as well. Hopefully, we'll get to a point where all people will see racism as being wrong. But sadly, at this point in time, we're not there yet. And our goal is to get most people or everyone on the same page. And we'll keep on trying.
Can you talk us through the Halo Pledge? And I first remember seeing an BBC article about it being adopted in a school in Wales. So what is it, and why have you decided to adopt it?
For me, this is a personal thing, right? Now, as a teacher in the UK, over the years, I grew my hair. I had very long hair. Right? Cane rows, plaits, you name it. I tried all the styles, and it was like, I'm not going to flatter myself, but yeah, I looked really cool. I looked great.
I can attest to that. I've seen a photo.
And yes, I enjoyed it. I did all of that. And within, I think, 6 years of being in just a class teacher role, I thought, what, I'd like to go and do something more in leadership. I applied for jobs in leadership, middle leadership and senior leadership. And I was unsuccessful for most of them. I remember I went back my head and I said, I don't know what. I've done everything I got the feedback from the first interview. I did what I was supposed to for the next one. But I'm always told, Dean, guess what? You came second, you missed out by a few points. And this had said to me, Dean, sometimes it's not about what you say or what you do. Sometimes it's about, it could be that your face doesn't fit. And I thought to myself, my face doesn't fit because I've got long hair. I've got it in plaits, I've got it in this, whatever it is. So what did I do? I thought I would join in with the norm. I went to the barber, and that was the saddest day of my life, where I cut my hair off, right? I cut it all off, and I thought, because I'm trying to fit in the norm. You would not be surprised. Cut my hair off, went for another interview, and guess what? I got a job. So and I thought to myself, I felt bad because, yes, I had to basically sell my soul in terms of my hair, which I loved to bits and took a lot of time to get it there. But I got a job because then now I look like a normal person because I've got long hair. So I could be a leader. But I'm the same person, I haven't changed. So because that happened to me, and that happened to other people as well, I've heard of stories of children who have been sent home because of the way they've done their hair, or if they put a bit of color in. And I thought, what, that is not right. People should not have to change who they are to fit the mold. I saw it happen in a school in Wales, and I thought, Wales, Lewisham, where the percentage of blacks is hugely different. And I thought, what? I'm here in a school, 2 schools in a federation. I saw the Halo Code and I adopted it as right away. I didn't ask the question because being where I'm at now, I can make those changes. In the past, I couldn't have, but now I can. So we bought into it. And I then also sent that on because our school is very big on social media. So if you ever get a chance, hear this podcast, check us out. We publish everything that we do because it's about representing who we are and what we belong to. I've shared this good news with Lewisham schools, and sadly, the take-up has not been great. There are people who didn't like it because there are elements of the code that they did not like. For me, it's just like a lesson plan. You get a plan that is produced by someone else. it will not suit the needs of your class. So you adapt, you tweak, you take the bits out that you want and leave the bits that you don't want, just like the Halo code. So we bought into it. And when we did it, and I shared it with parents, my parents were ever so happy because it's like, Mr. Gordon, thank you very much, because you know what, in the past I've had arguments with my child about what to do with their hair, and it caused no ends of different dramas. But now we can actually just come to school. I ask my kids for one thing: as long as your hair is clean, I don't care what it looks like, color, length, whatever it is, you come in as you are, because that is you. You are who you are. Your hair is a part of you. You shouldn't have to change it to fit the mold. So that is what we're doing. So we have taken an approach, and at the moment I think it's two of us, two schools in Lewisham, primary schools, who've actually adopted the code, and I'm hoping that at some point others will, because it's about empowering the pupils and the staff that you can be who you are. You don't have to jump through hoops, because as a white person, European person, you can do whatever with your hair and nobody looks at it. It's okay, but if a black person does something with their hair, they're told that they can't, and it doesn't fit into the code.
So I'm reminded that probably our listeners won't know what this Halo code is, and you've talked a bit about hair. So what is it?
So the Halo code is about respecting, adopting people with their natural hair. Right. Afro hair, that is it. So as a black person, your hair is a part of your identity. Last week we had World Afro Day, and we had a big deal here as well, because we had someone come in from Black Moms Up Front and did some workshops with the girls, and it's my hair is my crown. We don't mess with women's hair because that can be a dangerous thing to do. But it's not just women, it's men as well, because your hair is your hair. So it needs to be respected and accepted as it is.
I got a strong sense from the black parents and young people I spoke to during my consultation period that representation really matters. And not just any black face, just for the sake of it, but representation that's really rooted in care, support, and the elevation of black communities, and by extension, other marginalised communities. So what changes do you think could be made across Lewisham schools to support more black representation at the senior level?
Okay, so I spoke here earlier about the Stern Group worked over a year after you came and did your report and it's starting the whole process going. We've come up with an action plan, and it's got some elements of that. And one of the elements talks about improving black representations in leadership and governing bodies. That is the starting point of this whole thing. Now, governors have been challenged that when you're recruiting governors, there should be representation of black and minority ethnic groups on your governing body, because sadly, you got some governing bodies that are predominantly white. There is just nobody of any sort of color on them. Likewise, in leadership teams in schools as well, is exactly the same thing as well. Now, a lot of schools you go into, you'll see black cleaners, you see black people in the kitchen, and you'll see black people sometimes doing lunchtime cover. You'll not see them in leadership or in any position of power. And that in itself says to children that, you know what, if you want to be important, you've got to be white, because that's the message. Now, that doesn't sit well with me. So we need to show our families and our children that, you know what, actually, regardless of what color you are, you can aspire to achieve the top jobs. So that is what, in terms of doing this pledge is trying to achieve. Now, leaders and governors taking a whole school approach to embed race equality is another strand of the pledge. So leaders and governors taking a whole school approach. So it's not done in pockets. And then because that has been going to all staff as well, staff can challenge leaders and governors and ask, okay, so what are we doing as a school for race equality? So those are things that are there. Now, someone like myself, I'm not afraid to speak out and say what I think. I'll tweet things, I'll share things. And since then, I've gotten quite popular within my community. People come and ask for advice or support as to how we go about this. I've had parents from kids in other schools who are not being treated fairly, and I'm quite happy to help and support them, because sometimes parents are not fully aware of their rights And if they don't, they can be, sadly, they can be given a runaround. So I'm here to help and support. And this is what I mean by having people, not just because it's a blackface, but someone who actually stands up, can be counted, and will direct them and support them to get what is right. So overall, improving black representation in schools, in leadership and governance, that is what we do. And from governors adopt the pledge and take an old school approach to embedding race equality, by them doing that, we should see an improvement in all of our schools.
Great. So we are at the end now, and I guess my final question is, what happens next for race equality in Lewisham, and what can parents and children look forward to?
Okay, what happens next? We're at the start of the journey. I said we had, it was Windrush Day when we launched the pledge. A letter was also sent to parents to explain what the pledge is about and what our plans are. On Friday of last week, I went to a local primary school and I watched a performance by Peoplescape Theatre. It was about the migration story. So that's one thing that we've done as a steering group, is that 10 primary schools in Lewisham have now got the opportunity to see those performances, and it's talking about the migration story. And it's looking specifically at our Windrush generation, what they went through, what they did. I watched a performance and it was brilliant for our year 4, because I think some schools have that as their year 4 topic, migration and movement, so they can see what that is. Then the pupils in that class are then meant to perform their own interpretation of that story to the school within a few weeks' time. That's one element of it. A survey was sent out to all staff, to all parents and pupils a few weeks ago, as like a baseline to see how people feel about race and race equality in Lewisham. And then that will then be sent out again in about 12 to 18 months' time to see if things have changed. Alongside that, we have bought into intellectuals who are going to be doing sessions with leaders across Lewisham schools. I've signed up on an anti-racism leadership intensive program as well, which is something that, so we're doing a lot of little things that is being spread out across the borough, which was not here before. So with all of those happening over time, all I can see is that the future for race equality in Lewisham is bright, because again, having someone like me on the committee who will not sit there quietly and watch things go by, will be asking questions and making suggestions to make sure that things are done. Because for me, I take it personal. Being of Black Caribbean heritage origin, that's where I'm from, so therefore I take it quite personal. So therefore I'm here fighting to make sure that these things happen, because at the end of the day, you send your child to school, you want them to achieve the best. And for them to do that, the schools have got to have the right facilities, the right tools, and most importantly, the right people in the schools to make these things happen. And let's just be clear, right? You don't have to be a Black person to get things right for pupils, but you have to have the mindset that every child who comes through those doors in your school should be given a fair chance. If you block a child before they even open their mouth, then you're doing the wrong things. You need to make sure that every child is given a fair chance, and to do that, people need to understand that racism actually exists and try to stop making it worse, making it more difficult for other people. By doing so, then life will be a lot easier for those who will suffer the most.
Lovely. Dean, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
You are most welcome.
Thank you for listening. Visit our website for more free events and information at understandingsociety.sheffield.ac.uk.